go. We'll get you there, Vicki.
Here we go.
Call the meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Art, can I have a call and roll, please?
Morris. Here. Ms. Thies.
Here.
Mr. Morris.
Here.
Ms. Wager.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. Mr. Loudermilk.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Otter. Moving on, corrections to the journal of the preceding meetings. First, we have the March 2nd, 2021 Sunshine meeting. Please note if there are any corrections that need to be made, please state those at this time. If there are none, I would entertain a motion to accept the March 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilman Morris, a second by Councilwoman Wager. If there are no questions or comments, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Ms. Wager.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Thies.
Aye.
Mr. Norris. Aye. Ms. Wilson.
Motion carries. Next, we have the March 9th, 2021 meeting minutes. That would have been the regular monthly meeting. If there are any corrections that need to be made, please state those at this time. If there are none to be noted, I would entertain a motion to accept the meetings as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris, a second by Councilman Morris. Any questions or comments? Having none, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson. Mr. Norris. Aye. Ms. Thies.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Wager.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Next up, we have public comments. I'd open this time for public comment. Ask those that choose to make public comment this time, approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. It appears as though there is no one present for public comment. Moving on, communications from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county. Do we have any reports at this time? Appears there are none. Reports from committees. There are none. Ordinances relating to appropriations. First up, we have Resolution 2021-03 ROC 2021-16 Duke Energy Renewable Solar LLC asking for a 10-year real and personal property tax abatement. We heard representatives from Duke speak last Tuesday on this request for a tax abatement. There are representatives in attendance tonight. Are there any questions or comments from council concerning this request for a 10-year real and personal property tax abatement?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Wager?
I would say I did have a number of positive comments about the solar farm. Their people are extremely pleased that Duke is undertaking this project, and they're happy about it. I think they're hopeful that it might affect their bill, so you guys better pull a rabbit out of the hat. Rick.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes, Councilwoman Fedis.
I know we had addressed it before, but I would like some clarification, just as Mr. Berger has done some community work representing Duke, and we talked about how it's separate entities. I would just like maybe a little bit more information on the types of community engagement that we might see as a result of the solar farm.
Sure, I'm Tim Hayes, Environmental Director for Duke Energy Renewables. Yes, through the Duke Energy Foundation, overall focus umbrella of corporation, our renewables business allocation, that foundation is separate from the previous. So there'll be another pool of funds on the foundation that will spread across the entire portfolio. Forward. And then in addition, I think this keeping the community involved well, beyond that, there's always operation budget. Have everything responsible for but respect for all
Are there any kind of specific types of, like, I know like a lot of it here is a lot of like nonprofit or community development type thing. Is there anything different, or is it just a different source
Now,
of
we work
funds?
under the same
Same
rules
type of
that-
thing.
that the foundation in general, so yeah, there's certain categories like your social services, things like that, in the foundation. They're all, it's the same for us. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, because in my book, it's a foundation, yeah.
Mhm.
The second one is a workforce development. There's like forms, catches all. That's a nice thing, as Tim said, have my budget, see what was every week. Now we have his budget and having your own. You know, we'd be open. We would get family, and some ideas. No teams that lot out in the United States on project. They can sometimes be.
Thank you.
Questions?
Real quick, Rick. I know that the ask is for a 10-year, and there's been some discussion about possibly a reduction in that. That question's been posed to me a number of times. Do you guys have any appetite for anything less than 10 years? Or how does that impact this project?
They got authorized to ask for a maintenance year.
Sure. Okay. That's all I have. Any other questions?
I had one more in regards to the abatement. Just because it was something I had communicated with Rick and got some information back from you guys, to give us, or from you all, sorry, to give us an idea of how many, like, how many abatements are typically given on projects like this? I mean, what is your typical experience on these types of you have projects all across the country, and I think they said most get some sort of abatement. Is there any kind of idea of like how many? Is that all? Is that, I know that they had sent me some information on Texas specifically, but.
Pretty much all states.
Mhm.
It is a standard procedure to ask for the abatements by, not just by Duke, but by any of the solar developers for these types of projects. And all along the corridor, along the Wabash River for the counties, from Fountain County down to Posey County, where you're seeing a lot of the solar abatement, or solar development, they're all asking for
For abatements.
abatements.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add that it's I'm not involved in that much on the tax abatement side of our, but I know, sitting in on meetings and so forth, I can't think of any other project that we've developed where we haven't asked for and received some level of abatement. Like Nathan said, it varies greatly across jurisdictions, states, and counties, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Moving on, I'm going to go, we'll move up one item in the agenda. It's salary ordinance 2021-08, ROC 2021-012.
Mr. President, are you going to request some sort of a vote on the resolution?
Oh, I'm sorry. I got out of order.
I'll make a motion on
I apologize. Since I missed last week, I apologize. I was
You're out of practice.
Yes, I am. So if there are no further questions or comments, appears there are none. Entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-03, ROC 2021-16.
So a motion on the floor by Councilman Morris to accept Resolution 2021-03, ROC 2021-16. A second by Councilwoman Wilson. Any further questions or comments from council?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, will that be then as is for a 10-year abatement?
Yes.
Yes. As it's presented,
As
yes.
is presented?
Any other questions or comments from council? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Rick, when will my bill go down?
See you. Now moving on. Got a little out of order there. So we have a request from the courts regarding the IT director. And I believe we need to, we had the salary ordinance, which is 2021-08, that is attached to that, that's further down the agenda. And then the additional appropriation ordinance, 2021-06. So the salary ordinance is found on page 13, and the additional appropriation ordinance is found on page 14 of your booklet. So I'm going to move the salary ordinance up on the agenda. So salary ordinance 2021-08, ROC 2021-012, Vigo County Courts, and it's the county system administrator. We heard this request last week. It's to amend the job description and the compensation. Any questions about the salary ordinance itself or the request? Looks like we have Judge Lewis here in attendance. If there's any questions? There are questions or comments from council? I entertain a motion at this time. Yes.
Second.
So we have a motion to accept by Councilman Wilson, a second by Councilman Thompson. Are there any questions or comments? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. So next, we have the additional appropriation attached to that. Additional appropriation, ordinance 2021-06, ROC 2021-012, Vigo County Courts. It involves additional appropriation regarding payroll salaries, FICA, and PERF for a total out of county general fund of $8,608. Any questions or comments about that? If there are none, I'd accept a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion to approve by Councilman Thompson, a second by Councilwoman Wager. Are there any comments or questions from council? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. Next before us, we have resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation 2021-01, ROC 2021-10, Commissioners. It's found on page 15 of your packet. It looks like the request is to move $79,870 over to legal services. This request was discussed last week. Are there any questions or comments about that? If there are none, I entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Motion to approve presented by Councilman Thompson, a second by Councilwoman Councilwoman Wilson, wrong W. Are there any questions or comments from council? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Next before us, we have salary ordinance 2021-011, ROC 2021-10, Commissioners. And that is to amend a job description from full-time to part-time for the county attorney and amend the compensation attached to that job. Again, this was heard last week. Are there any questions or comments about that? If there are none, I entertain a motion at this time.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Wilson, a second by Councilman Norris. Are there any questions or comments from council? Having none, I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. Next before us, resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation 2021-02, ROC 15, Parks and Recreation. Do we have any questions or comments regarding this resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation? If there are none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion to approve by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Morris. Are there any questions or comments from council? There are none. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have salary ordinance 2021-07, ROC 2021-011, lit PSAP. We discussed this request a couple different times. It's been presented differently. Latest is to add 3 shift supervisor stipends of $1,500 apiece, and add 3 assistant shift supervisor stipends of $1,000 apiece. Are there any questions or comments about this request? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve at this time.
So moved.
Everybody?
I'll second that.
Motion to approve by Councilman Norris, a second by Councilman Morris. Are there any questions or comments? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Moving along, we have before us salary ordinance 2021-09, ROC 2021-013, building inspection. Looks like there's several parts to this. Amend title to administrative assistant, amend job description, amend classification from comma A to comma C, amend compensation from $17.39 an hour to $20.65 an hour. This request was heard last Tuesday. Are there any questions or comments from council regarding this request? If there are no questions or comments, entertain a motion at this time. Or I can hold if you're still reviewing documentation.
I would make a motion that we table this. Salary ordinance 2021-09.
Second.
So there's a motion on the floor from Councilman Thompson to table salary ordinance 2021-09, ROC 2021-013. A second by Councilwoman Wager. Are there any comments or questions from council? If there are none, I'd ask for a roll call vote to table.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. So next we have the additional appropriation attached to that request. So I'd say in theory, we probably need to table that as well to keep that live as well. So it's additional appropriation 2021-07, ROC 2021-013, building inspection. Any questions or comments from council? Any discussion? Any discussion regarding this additional appropriation or the salary ordinance, which was just tabled, since the two of them are attached together? If there are not any comments or questions at this time, I'd ask for a motion.
President Loudermilk, I make a motion that we table additional appropriation ordinance 2021-07.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor from Councilman Norris to table additional appropriation ordinance 2021-07, ROC 2021-013, building inspection. A second by Councilwoman Wager. Are there any questions or comments from council? Having none, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Tees?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have salary ordinance 2021-10, ROC 2021-14, commissioners. Administrative assistant, it's like amend job description, amend classification from Comet C to Pat B, amend compensation from $20.65 an hour to $44,090 a year, amend FLSA status from non-exempt to exempt. This request was presented and heard last Tuesday. Are there any comments or questions from council regarding this salary ordinance request? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second?
Is there a motion to accept? Motion on the floor to accept from Councilwoman Wager, a second from Councilman Morris. Any questions or comments from council? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Tees?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have additional appropriation ordinance 2021-08, ROC 2021-14, commissioners. That is the additional appropriation attached to the previous salary ordinance. Any questions or comments about the additional appropriation? Having none, I'd ask for a motion at this time.
Second?
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Wilson, a second by Councilman Morris. Are there any questions or comments from council? A roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Norris? Ms. Tees?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Wigger?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. We now have the encumbrances, which is ROC 2021-17. It's always a fun topic, right? Council heard information last week regarding the encumbrances, if I'm not mistaken. Are there any questions or comments from council regarding what was presented?
None. I have none.
Are there any concerns with any of the information presented? If there are no questions or comments from council regarding the encumbrances in ROC 2021-17, and if there are no concerns as to the presentation of those encumbrances, I think it's appropriate to just move forward and, as a matter of record, that the encumbrances have been presented without any exception from the council. If any member has exception with that, please state so now. Thank you. Moving on, honorary resolutions, there are none. Resolutions relating to fiscal policies of the council, there are none. Appointments, I believe it was last month we had discussed the Peterborough board with the potential reduction from 5 to 3 members. Are we still tracking that direction? Is that where we want to go? So it's been done? I must have missed the memo. Okay. I gotta get the memo. There's been a withdrawal that we've reduced. I mean, I don't want to withdraw until I know it's been reduced formally. So I guess that has occurred from 5 to 3. So with that, I would remove David Phelps as a council appointee to the Peterborough Board. So with that, we just have the one appointment at this time. So the 2 appointments will come from the Commissioner's office, correct? Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. It's crystal clear now. All right, with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes. You gotta be fast on the trigger, girlie. What? We need a Morris, Norris. Hey, Travis, should I have those guys call you? Those two guys? Okay. I'll do it. It may be Omar Tello or Marty Ledbetter on a weekend. You know, if that's if you're racing on the weekend, or if you're just around, maybe just around. When are you going to have the car?
The car tonight.
Okay.
Here now. I'm going to.
I'll just give him your number, and you guys work it out. Okay.